this one. I've been saving this one for a Wednesday when I needed a little, what would feel like a new start. So, Santa's Village from Cottage Needleworks. This is what I've done so far. So I've completed the first 3 houses and I've got a little stack there still to go. So this I'm calling, it's obviously still a WIP because it's nowhere close to being finished, but it's like having a mini new start, something fresh. So Mrs. Claus's Cookie Shop is today's WIP of the day, and I'm super excited to get started with this one. So I thought I would show that I've brought up on my iPad over here a picture of what it's going to look like when it's finished. That's when they're all done together as one piece. And as you can see, the candy cane border that separates the 3 rows, I know that not everybody decides to stitch that, and I'm still on the fence. So as you can see, I haven't put it in yet, well, because it's part of the design of the row below. But I'm curious to know, if you have stitched this, did you decide to add the candy cane border in between each of the rows, or did you leave it out and just put your houses right next to the border that's on the underside there? Just curious. But you know, because I still have Mrs. Claus's Cookie Shop to stitch before I really have to make that decision, I've got a little bit of time. So the crescent colors that belongs with this one is Peanut Brittle, and that is the color of her house, and it's a really, really pretty shade. Really pretty floss. I'm looking forward to stitching that little house. And all of the other colors, all of the other called for colors are DMC. So that's the job for today. So I have a few other things here beside me that I thought I would share with you. I've had some questions on my clamp system that I've been using. So I thought I would just show that here. So what I've been doing is I am using a Hearthside Craftworks floor frame, and it is the Mark II floor frame that I use. And what I've done is I've got the little sidebar here that I took off my floor frame because this is what I remove every day to add the next piece that I'm going to be putting onto my floor frame to work with. So I thought you might like to see how it works at the side here. So you can see it's handmade from oak, and that's how the sidebar works. So it's a really, really smooth turning mechanism, and there's a nice spring on the side, so it never gets too tight, and it has a really, really smooth turning operation to get to the back of your project. And these are the scroll rod finials, you know, the ends, the end caps. And the entire system uses these all over the place on the frame itself. So they're all interchangeable. So if you lose one, you can generally find them replacements quite easily. Not that I've ever done that. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to show you, these are the scroll rods that I use with the system. And as you can see, they have a fabric twill tape attached, stapled, I believe. Yep, stapled to the wooden rod. And I have a few pairs of these, and normally I would sew my fabric to the twill tape. But because I am switching out projects on a daily basis here, I've decided to do something that's a little faster. It's not my favorite, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but it really works well when you want to get through a lot of things quickly. So here's what the clamp looks like. It's a piece of plastic, and I believe it is made by a company called, I think it's called a Handy Clamp. So, and I am really hoping that someone can jump in and leave a comment below if you also use these handy clamps, because I can't remember if it's spelled handy with an I or handy with a Y. And I of course don't have the packaging, so I have no idea. Now, these are not meant to work together. So these handy clamps actually come with a rod of their own, and it's just a simple wooden rod. But the wooden rods that I purchased that came with this, the screws at the end on one side stripped, probably because I tend to make my tension very tight. And I think, I mean, that's just user error. I cranked too hard. And over time, these will give way, and it's stripped. So what I do is I use the handy clamp on an empty pair of scroll rods that came with the floor frame, and I simply clamp this just like a Q-snap. It just clamps the fabric right in place over top of that rod. And that's how it works. Easy peasy. That's it. So I hope that was helpful for some of you, and leave me a comment below if you have any other questions. Okay, so that's it for today's WIP. I'm going to get this attached to the rods and on my floor frame, and then it's a busy day today, so time to get to it. Let's get to work. Happy Wednesday, and I'll pop in a little video here of what I did yesterday. I loved every single stitch that I put into this yesterday. It was such a it was a great way to sort of get over that feeling of disappointment from the day before with my Christmas at Hawk Run Hollow, which, of course I'm going to get back to, but it was nice to feel like I'd had a successful day. So as you can see, I completed the color in this motif here, all the way around. So from about here, all the way around and up. And that's where I'm going to be leaving it for now, because there are lots of other WIPs to get to. But I guarantee you this one is going to be traveling with me this summer, and I'm probably going to, the next thing that I'm probably going to do is work my way to the left and complete that top border and go from there. So that's the plan. Northern Expressions Needlework, shades of blue, and I'm stitching this on a 40 count white linen, and I'm using the called for Dinky Dyes silks. There's only 3, and because it's 1 strand over 2 on 40 count, you don't need very much. So thoroughly loving this one. All right, that wraps up yesterday's WIP, and I hope you have a great Wednesday, middle of the week, and happy stitching. I'll see you tomorrow. I just realized that I never explained why these clamps are not my favorite. And I say that with a caveat because I actually really love using them. So pros and cons, the pros outweigh the cons to me. I would buy them again. But in fairness, if someone else is going to buy these, I think you should know that the one thing that the handy clamp does do, and if you are very, very particular about your fabric, you should know this before you buy them. When you leave your fabric in the handy clamp, and if you leave it rolled up at the tension that you use to stitch at, it does leave a mark on your fabric. So here's what it looks like after I had it. I left it rolled up in my frame overnight. Okay, now this doesn't bother me as much as it might bother someone else, because I know that when I crank the tension on this again, or simply iron it, these lines will for the most part disappear. And I also know that the coverage on my linen is going to be such that wrinkles don't usually bother me. They don't usually, what to say? We all have personal preferences, right? And so if that sort of thing would annoy you or bother you, then the handy clamp probably isn't for you. And you should probably know that you need to be in the habit of releasing the tension on your fabric after you stitch using them. And that's it. So I hope that was helpful, and at least I remembered to tell you why after I sort of left you hanging in the beginning there. So again, I would purchase them again. They're a very useful thing, but that is what they do to your fabric. So just so you have the whole story. Okay, that's it for real this time. I'll see you tomorrow.